Okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest with listeners. A lot of times when I have a guest on, I'm focused. I've got notes. I got a bunch of facts. A few days ago, I saw Mr. Sharlet on Rachel Maddow. I was back in the break room drinking coffee and eating dinner up here working on a film. And I said, I've read his stuff before. Yeah, I know about Ashcroft and all those guys in this group. And I've been doing some more research on that. I want to get him on. But Maddow was making it a left-right thing and about how these guys are all cheating on their wives and how they're hypocrites. And I was like, I've read his articles and other articles about this group, how it's all Machiavellian and the end justifies the means and dictators and strong men. And I go, man, that fits into Chicago school and the neocons and, you know, this whole sick philosophy that the globalists just kind of use to get well-meaning men to do evil things. The higher-up psychopaths are using it just as a control system, and it's one of many groups. But certainly then as he made the connections to even more powerful organizations, and I guess there is something to this. You know, I don't get too obsessed on this group or that group. I've found if it's CFR, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg, Bohemian Grove, then it's every other group. The leadership of these groups are the leadership of all the other groups. And so it's kind of an interlocking directorate. But I'll be honest, now that I heard him roll with info I'd never heard him say on the shows, because they always compartmentalize it, it made all these connections. Because you've got other secretive right-wing groups, like the CMP, and I've had guests on over the years that mentioned that, and I thought of it more as a right-wing think tank that were globalist, but it also had some anti-globalist in it, like the Hunt brothers, so that confused me. And I don't think anything's the top of the pyramid. I think at the top of the pyramid, it's all these groups nexusing in. But then I didn't know there was a Opus Dei connection. I just threw it out there. He said yes and listed the names. And then a Pentagon connection with the head of national security, which really is the real shadow government, James L. Jones, and the Chicago School, and the neocons. And so you just blew me away. You just got my attention. And so I want to get more into the Opus Dei connection, more of the national security connection. Take your time on Hillary as a friend. Take your time on their missions, their operations, what they're doing worldwide. I know you covered all in the book. I've read part of it just out and already a bestseller, The Family, Jeff Sharlet. But Jeff, go ahead. Run through it all. Give us the key information here. And bottom line, just from knowing what I know about separate groups that nexus in, this does sound pretty sinister.
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying this, Alex, and I think you're exactly right. We never want to make the mistake of saying there's one group that controls it all. There's multiple power bases, and the point I'm trying to make here is that the family is one of the most influential power bases, and yet it hasn't been measured. A sociologist, conservative sociologist, actually, as it happens, down there in Texas at Rice University, did a survey of 360 politicians in Washington, asking them to name the religious group that is most influential. 1 in 3 named the family. That's more than any other group got. That was more votes than James Dobson's Focus on the Family, more than any other group. They named the family, and what's crazy about this is the family denies that they exist. If you call up the leader of the group, as I had NBC News do last year when I did a segment with them, they said, oh, no, there's nothing to see here. We don't exist. There is no group. It's just a group of friends. Fortunately, I'd already shared with NBC News their tax records, and there's 600 boxes of documents that show, I think, something that does indeed go beyond left and right. This is a group about power. Again, I'll just repeat that saying that they have. We work with power where we can, build new power where we can. What that means is, unlike some right-wing groups that are just sort of extensions of the Republican Party, the family wants connections to Democrats as well. One is Senator Mark Pryor of Arkansas, pro-war Democrat from Arkansas. And Senator
so
Pryor,
they're apolitical. They want power.
Oh, no, they're not apolitical. They're not apolitical. I wouldn't say that. They want power. They have some specific ends. One is they believe in sort of a free market fundamentalism. They believe that.
Well, by apolitical, I meant they don't care about labels.
They don't care about labels. They care about power, right? They care about power and their agenda. And the agenda is two things. It's free market fundamentalism and it's American empire. That's what they've been working on for 70 years, and I heard the lead-in, so you may appreciate this. When back in 1945, the leader of the group, Abraham Vereide, I believe coined this phrase. I believe he may have been the first one to use it, although I think you'll know if I'm wrong. he said, there's a coming new world order. And he says, we're entering into world... 1945, that is documented in their archives, which anyone can
I don't think he coined it, but the fact that he used it, Hitler used it. Hitler used it. H.G. Wells wrote a book called The New World Order.
Okay, so it predates him, yeah. I mean, he was an interesting admirer of Hitler. Basically, they said they said, you know, what we're aiming for is a form of totalitarianism. They said, how about a fascist dictatorship for Christ?
No, Hitler is one of the earliest. You can't find, right around the same time, Hitler starts using it, then H.G. Wells uses it, but they both wanted different forms of socialism. Hitler, a more fascist form, though they're supposedly on different ends of the spectrum, National Socialists, the Nazis. Yeah. And then Hitler wanted to have somebody kidnap and kill H.G. Wells. So, like you said, there's competing factions. But to go ahead.
Well, I mean, you know, that's what, you know, when I said that their bottom line is American empire, and that's what led them into alliances. You know, we were talking before the break about their role in sort of whitewashing the records of former Nazis. One was a guy named Herman J. Abs, who was vice president of their German operation after the war, became known as the Wizard of the West German Miracle, brilliant financier until it was discovered that before he was Germany's banker, he was the man known as Hitler's banker. He, in fact, had helped spirit away untold amounts of German money to the Nazis who escaped to South America. And he was
so we have a Nazi connection with money coming over? Because we know the Bushes with Prescott have that connection.
Well, there's more than that. The head of their Swiss operation after the war was a banker named Alfred Herz, who used the family and its access to American politicians to come over and lobby for America to lay off all the money that, of course, they had stolen from the Swiss banks, had stolen from the Jews who had been killed, and you know, the so-called Nazi gold. You know, we forget that there were actually early attempts to investigate that stuff, and Alfred Herz, working through congressmen like Senator Alexander Wiley from Wisconsin and others, was able to lobby successfully using this group's network. That's really what this group is.
Wait a minute. This is the group that blocked the investigation of the rat line and the gold and diamonds?
I said they were a group. You know, I think you made an important point. There's no single group controlling all this stuff, but there's lots of different power bases in Washington.
Yeah, it's like a swarm of viruses or something. It's a whole bunch of them, but going in the same direction, more power, more control. Specifically, let's get more into that history, but can you backtrack? Because I read your articles years ago in Harper's and Rolling Stone, because I remember just reading this and then going and Googling some of it and finding that, you know, you were telling the truth because it was so shocking about their philosophy. And we don't care about abortion. Jesus wants power. We don't care about, you know, this and that. We like Machiavelli. I mean, this sounds like a psycho cult masquerading as Christians.
Well, let me give you a quote. This is from the news, and we had in that lead-in, we had Congressman Todd Thehart talking about abortion. It's not that they don't care about those issues. The group tends to be pretty right-wing conservative, so they care. This is not their bottom line. Their bottom line is American empire. But one time I was at the C Street House. This is the house in Washington where they're providing below-market housing for congressmen, Republicans and Democrats, by the way. This is a bipartisan thing. This was bipartisan power lust, you might say. And I was there, and Doug Coe, the leader of the group, was counseling Congressman Todd Thehart. And Todd Thehart had come in. Todd Thehart is not what you would call an enlightened man. He said he was concerned that the Christian was losing the race with the Muslim. And, you know, he said, what is this guy talking about? This is crazy. What he meant was, he said that Muslims are having too many babies while Christians are not having enough. So it turns out Thehart represents himself as an ardent foe of abortion. What he needs is abortion for Christians. He doesn't care if Muslims have abortions. In fact, he would like that. Well, now, Doug Coe, listening to this, says, okay, yeah, I hear you talking about this abortion issue. You know, I sort of agree with you on that, and that's fine. But I want you to think bigger. See, what I want you to do is to think in terms of a covenant. And he describes a covenant as something that men of power enter into secretly, privately. He calls it a publicly invisible but privately identifiable group of companions. That's in their official documents. It's a covenant. He says, with a covenant, you can do so much more. He says, think of men who had a covenant. He says, think of the mafia. And then I'm just direct quoting here. Here's his examples of where he looks for his leadership lessons. Hitler, Pol Pot, Osama bin Laden, and Lenin. So all we can see here is that he was an equal opportunity admirer of killers.
Good Lord. But again, when you're saying all of this, I'm thinking about the Straussian economists and philosophers. I'm thinking about the Chicago School, the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers similarly funded other schools of thought. Do you ever run into Rockefeller foundations or Rockefeller money and all this?
Yeah, Rockefeller, and there may be more, but in the early days of the family, the Rockefeller Foundation, of course, has gone through a lot of different incarnations. At one point it was essentially almost a front for CIA money, and that's been documented pretty well.
And it founded modern eugenics.